The Vice President of America, Kamala Harris, is in Ghana and is visiting Africa as part of her African tour. And when I tell you that the lady, Her Excellency, came empty-handed, armed with political rhetoric and unrealistic expectations of what Africa should be and the kind of relationship that it will have in America, you might think I'm lying, but that's exactly what happened. Throughout her tour, she sounded like she's at a political rally trying to convince people to buy into an ideology or an agenda. Remember, this trip was meant to neutralize or sort of match up the influence that China has in Africa. The only difference is China comes with money, goodies, projects, and China does not try to impose its values and what it thinks is right on Africans. This tour is not as efficient and as effective as they might have thought it would be. Hi guys, how are you doing? It's always lovely to sit here and chat with you. My name is Ndiro Ganga. I am a business journalist and I'm also a content creator. I create content on the Diaspora community moving back to Africa and just the journey, how it is, how they're settling in and how they are acclimatizing in these communities. Well, today we want to talk about the American Vice President Kamala Harris, who is in Africa for her diplomatic tour. Now, it's very important to know that when you listen to a lot of Western media, American media, they're saying the essence of this tour is sort of neutralize the kind of effect and impact that China has in Africa. To just put some things into context, China has been having long-standing relationships with Africa, and China found a way of almost tricking, but not tricking. China found a way of earning the trust of African leaders and Africa in general. Contrary to how diplomatic relations have run years before, when China came on board, they allowed Africans to be themselves. They said, listen, we're not trying to impose our value, our ethics, or what we believe on you. We want you to come on the table as you, who you are, and we're going to come to the table as ourselves. This just goes to show African leaders that they have a voice and their place is going to be respected on the table. One of those typical examples is issues to do with human rights, issues to do with elections, issues to do with things like the pride community. You will never hear China say either or when it comes to those issues. For us to be able to do business and threaten sanctions, China comes on the table saying, we understand that you're different people, different culture. This is how you live your life, and this is how we're going to live our life. On the contrary, when America comes on the table for any form of interaction, they come with conditionalities. They come with they come with very high expectations, and now African leaders are beginning to feel like, oh, it's sort of like you're selling me a short deal, but again, it's America. You have no choice. So China has positioned itself as the alternative to America. And while you cannot downplay the importance of America, it's good to have an ally in people like China and now Russia. China has financed many infrastructural projects on the continent. I'll just give you an example. In Kenya, they've done the standard gauge railway, and that's like a massive project. Though it had its own irregularities, but it's a big project that China can be very proud of. If you look at the Belt Road Initiative financed by China, the impact of China and the money that it brings on the continent, the kind of projects that it's been able to do even here in Ghana, the kind of money that they're putting in here, the kind of money that they've put in countries like Zambia, it's substantial amounts. And this money doesn't come with conditionalities. It's debt money. You do whatever you're going to do with it, but then you have to pay us. And they do it through other arms of their government and corporations like Exim Bank. So you're not even directly dealing with the government. The government is almost like a facilitator. And now America is beginning to almost feel threatened because China is going to all the right places in Africa and it's falling in the good graces of these people. But then again, China is a threat to America in terms of being a world superpower and the growth of their economy. So America is trying to leverage whatever support and influence it has on the continent, and that's why Kamala Harris was here or is still here. But let's go through some of the things that stood out during this diplomatic tour. And what I'm saying, she came empty-handed.
To help address the threats of violent extremism and instability, today I am pleased to announce $100 million in support of Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, and Togo. Last week, President Joe Biden announced a strategic plan for coastal West Africa as part of the United States strategy to prevent conflict and promote stability. Today, funding and the announcement that I've just made will help implement that plan and will address security, governance, and development issues in the region.
I do not say that is not good, but that's such a small amount, particularly when it's being divided between different countries, and also the agenda of the money is not very clear, and that it doesn't do much to the masses. Does that make sense? Like when China is giving you money, it's very clear. This money is to build a dam. This money is to build a road. And the way China invests, they're very keen on infrastructure because the masses can see. They can attribute it to China. China then can be able to say, we've developed infrastructure, X amount of kilometers of roads in Africa. I don't think that Americans have gotten that fact almost right, or I don't think that the donor funds that Kamala Harris pledged can almost match the investment strategy that China is using in Africa. I think the other thing that stood out for me was the fact that there was a lot of rhetoric on women empowerment.
On the continent of Africa, we know women grow a majority of the food, yet they are less likely to own the land they farm. They represent a majority of frontline healthcare workers, but face disparities in health outcomes. Women are entrepreneurs, yet have limited access to capital and markets. They are peacemakers and bridge builders, yet continue to be underrepresented at the tables where decisions are being made. And there are many factors that impact a woman's ability to survive and thrive. One of those is economic empowerment. And when we lift up the economic status of a woman, let's be clear, we lift up the economic status of her children, her family, her community, the entire economy benefits. So know that the United States of America will work alongside our partners each and every day to close gender gaps here and around the world.
What do you mean by women empowerment? Does that make sense? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Do you mean that we need to champion for more women to be elected into office? Do we need to lobby for governments to appoint more women in cabinet positions? What do you mean when you say women empowerment? Should we be looking to raise funds to be able to ensure that girls can be able to go to school and stay in school? What do you mean? Do you mean that we need to start giving incentives to companies that hire more women just to bridge the gender gap at the workplace? What do you mean? Tax release for companies that will be hiring women? What do you mean? Like, what at an international scale, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Are you going to work with ILO to ensure that minimum wage for women is raised? What do you mean? It's just blatant. And the rhetoric continues in her saying, Africa is the future. Okay, y'all Americans have been saying Africa is the future since 2000.
As President Joe Biden said at the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit last December, we're all in on Africa. We are all in. Because African nations play such a critical role on issues of global importance, issues that matter to the American people and to the world. Issues like food security, the climate crisis, public health, and resilient supply chains. We are all in because African leadership is critical to global and security. African nations are essential partners at the United Nations and in support of international rules and norms. We are all in because the fates of the American people and of America and the continent of Africa are interconnected and interdependent.
Africa is not the future or the present. Africa to the west is just a place that is rich of natural resources, and you say whatever it is so you can have a small piece of that cake. But Africans are getting to a place where they're asking, what are you giving me? You understand? Like, Africans are asking, what are you giving me in place of what you want from me? And so that rhetoric of Africa is the future is the present. Ask not what you can do for Africa, but what America can do with Africa. Really, lady? Really? We know that we are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to negotiations and the kind of projects that we want. Okay. A country like Ghana, for example, Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are the biggest producer of cocoa. 70% of the world cocoa is produced by these two countries. Yet, cocoa farmers in this country are very poor. So if you want to tell me what Ghana can do in partnership with America, how about back us up when we go to international markets and ask for better prices for our raw materials? Does that make sense? Like, it's just, if you listen to the speech, it's almost like you're at a political rally. What are you saying? Are you trying to win my vote? Are you trying to win my support? Are you trying to get people to cheer for you? These people have no significance in your political career, so you don't need to say what you think they want to hear. You just have to come with crisp and clear cut goodies that you're going to give them. And that's what Dr. Arikana is always talking about. She's always saying, what's the African agenda? What was the Ghanaian agenda in that visit? Because it almost feels like just another visit. Well, the other thing that also came up was the rights of people in the Pride community, and the way it was approached. It was a very diplomatic approach. She took a very conversational tone and almost like just putting it out there on the table. And also the president was very diplomatic in the way he handled it, but it raises a lot of questions. The United States has been very keen to say that Uganda is going to pay very dearly for the anti-LGBTQI bill that they passed. And there's also a bill like that in Ghana by Sam George. And Ghana is also like a heavily religious country. I'm African, born and bred in Kenya, but okay, now Kenya under President Ruto, they're heading in that direction. But I feel like Ghana is a heavily religious country, and there's going to be some push and pull when it comes to the bill and the rights of people in the Pride community. And it will be interesting to see, because she did not necessarily take a stand. The conversation was not necessarily going anywhere. She said something while saying nothing at the same time. And so Secretary Blinken was here, Jill Biden did her trip in Kenya, and now Kamala Harris. But I just feel like if you want to neutralize or sort of counter the kind of support and influence that China has on the continent, come with something. Do not come empty-handed. Avoid empty rhetoric of Africa is our partner. No, we are not, because we look at the trade imbalance. We buy more from you and you buy very little from us at very low prices, and you can be able to go and make profit. So no, thank you. We are not partners, and we recognize that. Do not even try to pretend. And if you're going to push an agenda, at least be bold about it and state the terms, because you're giving people in the Pride community in Africa a little bit of hope. Then it's almost like you're lukewarm. You're in, but you're not in. So which one is it? Well, guys, that's the end of this video. I don't know what you got from her speech. I don't know what stood out for you, but for me, if the goal was to neutralize China's impact, maybe this is the starting step, but they're starting really low because China has set the bar really, really high. That's all I had for you. My name is Ndiro Ganga. I'm a business journalist. Come over to my channel at Ndiro Ganga and let's have a conversation about moving to Africa and the highs and lows of this journey. I'll see you again next